we'll all be able to leave and head back to our homes. So I'd like to introduce, this is our third self-care session. And how have you enjoyed the self-care sessions thus far? Should we continue along this track, or should we try to get the speaker we had last year back? So for today's self-care activity, we're going to hear from one of our own. Amy Grosso is the past chair of the Central Texas chapter. She's also a member of the Chapter Leadership Council. Amy has her PhD in counseling and counselor education and has worked as a mental health counselor and as the director of behavioral health services at a large school district. She's currently is the expert in residence with Raptor Technologies. She's going to be talking to us today about the importance of setting boundaries to self-care. Please welcome Amy Grosso.
How's everybody doing? Really bright-eyed and like excited? Nobody sleepy? Party too late? You know, I was remembering back to my first CLC, which was like 7 years ago. It seems like 50 because that was pre-COVID. But I remember the last day and I was feeling so exhausted, yet I was energized. I was overwhelmed, but I was inspired. And I'm wondering if some of you are feeling that way today too. Yeah. And so I think it's the perfect time to talk about the role of balance and boundaries in self-care. Because if you're like me, I loved the salsa dancing, right? And I'm like, I should take a salsa dancing class when I get home. And then I absolutely adored yoga. And I'm like, I really should start practicing yoga again. And I'm talking to you today about balance and boundaries, not because I'm an expert. I'm not in any way. I really think that I'm drawn to this topic and I continue to talk about it all the time because I need it. And it's a journey, it's not a destination. And we're always trying to continue on this path of what does it mean to care for ourselves and believe in ourselves and practice things that are true to who we are. So that's how I come to you today. And I'm beyond excited. And if I'm honest too, I'm a little intimidated because while I've talked to large groups of people before, I don't think I've ever talked to a group that I'm more inspired by, I look up to, I value. You know, the last large group of people I talked to were attorneys. My sister's an attorney, so I can make fun of it a little bit. And I wasn't as nervous as now because I respect all of you so much. So what's my why and why am I here? And I thought it was important to give you some context of why I'm talking to you today. I was first introduced to AFSP for the Dallas Overnight Walk, the April 2015 one, not the one in 2018, if any of you did it when it was 5 million degrees still at midnight. My sister and I decided to do it because we live in Texas. And I thought, why start with a 2-mile walk when you can start with a 16-mile walk? We didn't really know what we were in for. We knew we wanted to honor our mom. My mom, Cecilia Bigby, she died by suicide on August 22nd, 1998. It was the day after my 19th birthday. And I don't know if 98 stands out to you, but it has stood out to me since the first AFSP CLC I went to, because they were talking about that Bob started in 1998. And this just always stuck with me. And if you remember 2 days ago when Bob was showing his slides of the first suicide meeting in 1998, that was 2 months after my mom had died. And I am amazed, and I can't believe how far we've come in the 25 years since I lost my mom. So as we were joining the walk, and it's like, oh, you can have a team and you need a team name. And I'm like, okay. And my sister, the overly eager extrovert, like, oh, you should call it Love Louder in honor of our mom, because our mom loved so loud. And we also said we want to love louder because we want to love louder than the shame, the guilt, the judgment that we had felt ever since her death. Little did I know in that walk, I would immediately find my home, I would find my family, and I would find my purpose. I have another why. The first picture is me and my mom. And like I said, my mom loved louder. She was the mom you dream about, right? One of my favorite memories of her was first grade. I was a really picky eater. And we had forgotten to look in the newspaper because that's what we did back then for what was for lunch. And she looked after I left and she was like, oh no, Amy's not going to eat the lunch, it's stew. And she brought me Burger King. She loved loud. She loved everyone loud. She loved people that no one else loved. The crabby post office lady, we lived in a town with 1,200 people. She was a crabby lady and had lots of cats. I'm saying I'm a dog person. But let's just say, I learned this after the fact. My mom would bake her strawberry bread and would take it to her. The problem is my mom loved everyone louder so much she had nothing left for her. She had no identity or worth outside of just serving others. And I knew this, and it never hit home more than when I had my son. So this is a picture of me and my son 2 years ago. His name's Keaton, and he is 10. And if later you hear me cheering, he's in a ninja competition, like American Ninja Warrior competition this weekend, and I can watch the live stream. So he got third yesterday. We're rooting today. But I've been on this mission of how do I love this precious child fully and not lose myself? How do I love others in a way that my mother taught me, but not lose myself? And so that's my why. And that's why I come to you today. I don't have answers. You're probably going to leave with more questions than answers. And I really think that's the purpose, right? We start questioning things. We look at things different. So there's not going to be a top 10, 3 easy steps. That's not going to happen. So let's just start talking about self-care. I want you to think for a minute, how would you even define self-care for yourself? So just take a couple of minutes. How would you define self-care? You see, the problem is society is trying to define self-care for us. I did a nice Google search yesterday. I promise I did not plan this whole thing yesterday. I planned way before. Just the Google search was yesterday. And this is what came up. Self-care is a $1.5 trillion industry. Some of my favorite that I found, like 25 of the best self-care gifts to treat yourself. Like, okay. My really favorite was the sexy self-care. So now, not only do I have to practice self-care, it has to be sexy. So we're overwhelmed by this. And if you're like me, my whole life, I have heard different things like put your oxygen mask on first, right? Like if you're just like on your airplane, if you're with your kid, you put yours on first, that. And I'm like, what if I can't find my oxygen mask? Or you hear it's okay to be selfish and take care of yourself, which I'm going to just be honest, I hate this one because we have to stop associating selfishness with any aspect of taking care of ourselves. Make yourself a priority. And if you don't practice self-care, you're burnout. No kidding. I have burned out time and time and time again. And you would think I would get it. We read about it enough. So why am I struggling to practice self-care? Everything changed for me when I read this article probably 5 years ago, and it was called We Don't Need Self-Care, We Need Boundaries. And it was by a psychiatrist, and the article was written for other women in medicine, but it didn't matter because every line I read, I thought, my goodness, did she like peek into my soul? Because what she said is that what we're being sold in our $1.5 trillion industry is really faux self-care. It's not actual self-care. Because if you're like me, yes, I'll go get a pedicure, but guess what? At the end of that pedicure, maybe I have pretty toes, I've spent money, but everything else is still weighing me down. So she talks about the only thing for self-care is having boundaries. It's making choices. It's learning to say no. And guess what? This is incredibly hard work. It's hard work, and you're the only one that can do it. It's putting away martyrdom culture, right? It's putting away that it's a badge of honor that I have sacrificed everything for others. It's also realizing we're human and we can't do it all. I do love in the article, she talks about like taking away your superhero cape. Anybody here like superhero movies? I'm forced to because my husband and my son, begrudgingly. But anyway, we're Team Marvel. If you know anything, you're either Team DC or Team Marvel. Yeah. So this idea of being a superhero really hit me because if you know anything about the Marvel characters, they're not always superheroes. Peter Parker, also known as Spider-Man, he's not always Spider-Man. I mean, maybe if he was always Spider-Man, he could save more people, but he's not. Sometimes he's Peter Parker. So maybe I should try to be a little bit more like a superhero and not try to save everybody all the time. So this has gotten me really thinking about boundaries, reading this article, and it made me think that boundaries are like a house. Stay with me. It is like I'm this little house, a cute house like the one in the picture, and I have a beautiful yard, and there's gardens, and there's flowers everywhere, and I like for other people to be able to enjoy my yard. But then I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I get really mad when they stay past 8 p.m. Because don't they know better? Didn't their mama raise them to leave earlier? And so I get so upset. Like, why are these people still in my yard? And I blame it on them. But the reality is, it's my fault because I didn't set the boundary. I didn't put a fence up with a cute little gate, right? It can be a little picket fence. It doesn't have to be barbed wire. And I also didn't put a sign or express that you're welcome to use my yard, but you have to leave at a point. We want other people to have boundaries for us because it's easier. So what stops us from having boundaries? What if they don't like me? I like to be liked. And when I say no or I set up a boundary, guess what happens? Some people might not like me. No one will do it if I don't. Anybody ever say that? The problem is when we don't ever say no, nobody ever has an opportunity. And this one sort of goes with the next one of they won't do it right. I know nobody in this room has ever thought that, right? I'm just going to do it because they're not going to do it right, and I'm going to have to go redo it. I told my husband I was going to share this story. I adore my husband, but when we were very first together, I would be doing the dishes and loading the dishwasher, and he would come behind me and rearrange everything. See, you hear, you feel me? And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm just moving some things. And I'm like, I know how to load a dishwasher. But he kept doing it. And at some point, I'm like, I don't like feeling like I'm stupid about loading a dishwasher. So guess what? I no longer do the dishes. I don't. We're going on like 13 years, and I don't do the dishes. But the joke's really on him because when he's not at home and I'm forced to do the dishes, guess what? They still get clean. How many of us are rearranging that other people's dishwashers and then we wonder why they no longer want to help? Imposter syndrome. Anybody? Poster child right here. Imposter syndrome is this idea that I really shouldn't be where I am. Trust me, I feel that right now being on the stage. And if I don't keep working hard, they'll find out I'm a fraud. A lot of us don't have boundaries because of that. And the last one is my worth is my work. So I can't set a boundary because then I will feel like I have no worth. And this really hit home for me a couple of years ago. I was doing a similar presentation for educators about self-worth and boundaries and stuff. And I'm not going to go into this. This is just for like a little show, but I was talking about holistic wellness, and I was using this model of holistic wellness that Jane Myers was actually my dissertation chair, and it's about all aspects of wellness, and I'm going through it, and I realized as I talk about self-worth that I really don't think any of it, the other is possible if we have no worth and we have no value in ourselves. Because if I don't value me and I don't see my worth, will I ever set a boundary? And will I ever think it's okay to take care of myself? And so this started me down this journey of realizing what is my self-worth. And do I value me without doing anything? Do you realize that you have worth even if you're just being? You innately have worth. I also, and this was a really hard realization to come to, that I was also working harder and harder and harder because I was trying to save my mom. And the reality was, she was gone. I was never going to save her. Yet I had to save me. How many of you feel like we're trying to save everyone else, yet we have forgotten about ourselves? And it makes me think of this idea of self-empathy. I can guarantee this is probably one of the most empathetic rooms of people there could be. But have you ever thought about having empathy for yourself? And this is really important because did you know our brains are automatically wired to go to the negative? And this can go in many other directions, but we really want to talk about our self-talk right now. You are hardwired to think of the negative. And it takes practice to think of the good. This is like one of my favorite little graphics, the one like, brain, look, you do all these good things. And you're like, nope. My brain's like, nope, we did this one bad thing. And that's what we're going to focus on. You mean like, I still remember when I was in business school at Baylor, and I was in this business writing class, and I still remember I was doing a presentation, and I put Manuel instead of manual, right? That's what our brain does. So do you practice this idea of self-empathy? Anybody seen the movie Inside Out? Oh my gosh, who's excited a new one's coming out? And anxiety's coming to the party, and I'm like, I've never felt so seen in my life, right? Like my husband and son, like they're excited, but like they're like, oh, we know you're way excited, Mom. But there's a clip in the movie Inside Out. If you have not watched it, I really highly encourage it. There's this clip in the movie, and Bing Bong is this elephant. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but Bing Bong gets really sad because the wagon that he loved and had all these memories with Riley gets picked up and thrown into the abyss. So Bing Bong's really sad. And the character Joy, she's the emotion Joy, is so focused on needing to get to the train station that she comes up to Bing Bong and is like, everything's all right, come on, we can tuck through, let's go. And Bing Bong won't leave. Then sadness comes in and says, I can tell that that meant a lot to you. You probably had great memories with Riley on that. And just sits with Bing Bong. And then Bing Bong's ready to get up and go. When you're going through something, how do you talk to yourself? Are you Joy saying, we just got to keep going? Or are you sadness that says, it's okay? It's understandable for you to be feeling the way you are. How many people constantly say, I should be doing more? I should make Sure, I do everything I've learned. Please don't try to do that. I should help more. I should. You've got to stop doing that. What would it look to treat yourself with compassion? What would it be like to talk to yourself how you talk to so many others? We have compassion and empathy for everyone around us, and we save none for ourselves, which makes it no wonder that we're willing to have boundaries and balance, because we're afraid. You are imperfect, permanently and inevitably flawed, and you are beautiful. I'm going to read that again. You are imperfect, permanently and inevitably flawed, and you are beautiful. I believe this some days more than others. You might believe it great for a while and then have to remind yourself. But this is the aspect of self-empathy, which allows us to have self-worth, which allows us to take care of ourselves. You see, I realized that years ago when we named our team Love Louder, that it was about loving others louder. And the reality is I have to love me louder. I have to love me louder than my negative thoughts, imposter syndrome, disappointing others. I have to love me louder. You have to love you louder. And it's only then that we truly can love others. And this is an activity we don't have time to do today, but I really want you to consider at some point writing an empathetic letter to yourself. What do you want to say to yourself? What have you waited for others to say to you, only to realize they've been saying it all along? You just don't believe them because you don't believe it yourself. What would it be like to write a letter to yourself in the same way you would write to someone you love to tell them how much you appreciate them? I know it sounds a little weird, but it can be transforming. And I've had to write letter after letter after letter to myself. As I said, this is a journey. Some days I'm better, some days I'm not. And then it comes to, how do I balance it all? How do I put these all together? And you're probably like, Amy, all this sounds great, but what happens when I go home? So I want you to think a minute, and if you have a piece of paper on your table or a phone or anything, draw a big circle on it. And on the inside, I want you to write that everything that's in your control about self-care, boundaries, self-worth, self-empathy. What are the things in your control? And then on the outside, I want you to write the things that are out of your control. For example, what's in my control? I really do have control of saying yes or no. What's out of my control is how people will respond to me. That is not in my control. So think for a minute, what's in your circle and what's out of your circle. Somebody else yell out, what else is in your circle? What else, what do we have control over? How you feel? Thoughts? How we react? I love that one. Other things that are in our control. What you do, I love that one. Who you let into your life. Ooh, that's a boundary there. Your what? Time. What's on the outside of your circle? How others treat us? Yeah. What we do. Well, what others do. What, we can't control that? I thought I could. I definitely tried with a 10-year-old and it does not work. What else is out of our control? Oh, what other people's priorities are. What other people think of me. How people will react to me. The weather. That's a good one. I want you to think to yourself, where do you spend most of your time and your energy? Things outside, right? I do this all the time. You would think I would learn, but no, it's a weekly activity. And I've come to the conclusion of and I don't know if this is true for you, but why I focus on what's outside of my control. Because it's easier. It's easier to blame someone else, judge someone else, make it their fault that I don't have boundaries. You know, I used to always wonder, like, this, especially when I worked for a school system, like, why do they keep asking me to do these things? Like, don't they know I'm already busy? And then I realized it's because I had sucker written across my forehead, and I would always say yes. So it's easy for me to stay on the outside of the circle and blame others and say, well, they're going to do this, or why aren't they doing this? Because for me to focus on what's in my control, it is the hard work. And focusing on what's in my control might require me to make changes. And a lot of times I don't want to do that. So when we talk about balance, boundaries, self-care, we have to start with what's in our circle. You know, maybe right now you don't talk to yourself very kindly or with empathetic words, but what's in your control is working on it. Maybe you're not to the point of fully saying no, but maybe you can practice it. Those are the things that are in your control. And I have learned that the only way we really move forward with this is if we're willing to do the work that's in my control. You know, and I want to, this quote, it was from the article I referenced. Self-care is valuing your own feelings and thoughts, despite knowing that you might let other people down. It means being able to tolerate other people's disappointment and trust that it's not a moral failing on your part. Let me read that again. Self-care is valuing your own feelings and thoughts, despite knowing that you may let other people down. It means being able to tolerate other people's disappointment and trust that it's not a moral failing on your part. As I started this saying that this journey of balance and boundaries, it's so much harder than what our society wants us to think of self-care. You can't buy this. And there's nothing sexy about this type of self-care. This is the internal hard work, but I hope you know you're worth the hard work. I hope you know you deserve to talk to yourself with self-empathy and love and kindness. You are of value, and you have to believe that. In closing, and if we were a smaller group, I always make people, I want you to think of one word that you want to take with you from our 30 minutes together. I in no way think you're going to remember everything. You might not remember anything. That's okay. But what's one word that sticks out to you from our time this morning? If you want to write it down, put it in your phone, sticky note. I have so many sticky notes on my computer at home. Love them. What is one word that you want to remind you? And then if you're comfortable, take a minute with your table to share out your one word. If you don't want to, you're allowed to say pass because that's boundaries. So with your table, just take a minute. What's your one word? Okay. I hope you enjoyed sharing your one word with each other. And I hope you follow up with each other to remind each other of what your word is. It's very easy when we go back, we're flying home, driving home, it's very easy to go back to patterns. But one word can remind you of what self-care really is. So please help remind each other. Thank you. It's been so much fun to be able to talk with you.